The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Let's get going on a Football Friday, brought to you by our good friends at Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. Banks & Jones, don't settle. Play to win. banksandjones.com. Hit the like and subscribe button if you want to hear from Ollie Lane. If you want to hear from Jimmy Hyams, that's right, the former Tennessee offensive lineman will join us to talk NC State, and the Hall of Famer, sports writer respectively, will all be a part of the program. So we've got a lot going on, and Ollie will join us at 11 o'clock. I did send him the link, so I just want to make sure and be clear with him. If he were in the background by chance, I want to let him know. 11 o'clock, we will visit with Ollie. Ollie, is that okay with you? Can we tease it a little forward? Did I mess up the time?
No, you're good. I was making sure that I was still in the right spot. So
all right. We'll talk to you at 11, brother. We look forward to it.
Sounds good.
There's Ollie teasing himself. That's the way to do it. He could be like a radio pro. All right. Also on the program today, as we are absolutely loaded up, why Tennessee needs to bury NC State. I'm not sure I agree with that. What are Tennessee fans most hoping to see in the game against the Wolfpack? 4 downs will tackle that. What if Tennessee had hired Dave Doeren? Talk to Jimmy Hyams about that. And the Vols, are they taking NC State too lightly? Bank on it. They're not. Brought to you by Commercial Bank later in the program. This day in Tennessee sports history. Stat of the day, Ollie Lane. We'll talk a tougher than you think defensive front for the Wolfpack. Will have picks and bets. So loaded up on the program. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am tremendous, except for last night, guys. I had a parlay that involved Travis Kelce going over 40 receiving yards, and that was my one beat. I hit everything else. And I am having a horrible start to the betting season. Horrible.
How about a poll question? What do you least want to hear about from somebody else? Their fantasy football team or their gambling? Mine's fantasy football team, but gambling's a close second. All right, what is the real, no offense, what is the real poll question, Caleb?
Dave doesn't care about my money at all.
Well, I guess to some extent I do. All right, so Caleb, what do we got as our poll question? Go ahead and set it up, and that will be brought to you by our great friends at the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED to get 10% off. The promo code HOOKED to get 10% off. What is our poll question that is up and rolling right now on the YouTube page, Caleb Calhoun?
Well, this is one I thought would be closer, but it's, will NC State ever be a threat to the Vols in recruiting? Yes, they are a sleeping giant. No, they'll never be relevant. And 100% of voters, among 18 voters right now, are selecting no, they'll never be relevant.
That leads us to today's tough question, and Caleb has been ahead of the curve on some things. I'm not as sure about this. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Will Tennessee ever feel the burn from NC State? Now, back in the 80s, we just said they're never going to feel the burn in recruiting from Clemson. But Caleb makes an interesting argument. Caleb, so tell me why the Vols should be worried about NC State in recruiting one day.
Well, this is more about why the Vols need to bury NC State on Saturday to make sure this doesn't happen.
Okay.
Let me just, guys, give you a quick history lesson real quick. And this wasn't too long ago. 2021, Tennessee blows out South Carolina. 2022, they're undefeated. They're balling. They get a couple of commitments from South Carolina. They go face the Gamecocks on the road. What happens, Dave? The Jeremy Banks saga happens. Tennessee lost 3 commitments to South Carolina because of that game alone. One who flipped, 2 other 4-stars they would have gotten who committed to South Carolina. These Carolina schools are threats if Tennessee lets them become threats. NC State is a solid program led by Dave Doeren right now that is in a very unique position where they could, if the chips fall in a certain way, take over the ACC. And if they do that, that'll make them high profile enough to be able to recruit the area. Let me explain why they can take over the ACC. Clemson's on the downward trend. They are declining, and I think the narrative surrounding Dabo is only hurting his calls, which is going to make it harder for him to recruit long term. North Carolina's got a 175-year-old coach who will never do more than what he's doing right now. All due respect to Mac Brown. Florida State is a one-year wonder fluke. I don't think they're that good of a program under Mike Norvell. Florida State and Clemson are, by the way, spending more time trying to get out of the ACC than they are trying to recruit and win games. And that narrative is only hurting them on the trail. In Miami, they're going to be good this year because of Cam Ward, but Mario Cristobal can't last long term. So there's a very good chance NC State becomes the class of the ACC. And we saw this happen no less than 15 years ago. Clemson took advantage of a very down ACC under Dabo Swinney. Started winning conference titles, competing for conference titles. Meanwhile, it was just enough for them to start plucking recruits away from Tennessee that was in a decade of dysfunction. That only increased a decade of dysfunction. And the narrative of Clemson dominating the ACC was enough for them to start recruiting at a high enough level where they could then compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias and win 2 national titles in 3 years. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean NC State can't do the same thing.
Elias says, for what it's worth, I think NC State is a sleeping giant, but they also won't be a threat because they'll never be in a situation of buy-in at the SEC level. So I'm going to strengthen your argument, and then I'm going to tell you how I really feel, okay? I think Caleb's on to something in that NC State could be the default school. If Dabo Swinney gets sick of the new college football, Shane Beamer's going to get fired, transition there. Eventually, Mac Brown's going to retire at North Carolina. So that area, NC State could be the default school for kids that want to stay close to home. So I'll give you that. If you're now in Charlotte, it's almost as close to come to Knoxville as it is otherwise. But the further east you get, obviously, the closer you are to NC State. East you get, the closer you are to NC State's campus. So, Caleb, I'll give you that. I do think that Tennessee could lose a guy or two because they want to be at-home kids and they don't believe in Clemson, North Carolina, or South Carolina anymore. So I'll give you that. But I can't say that they'll ever really be a formidable foe against Tennessee in recruiting. I just don't ever see that. We did their averages. They average out to about a top 40 class over the past 4 years, and they were outside the top 50. Tennessee, with all the junk that they had going on, averages about a top 15 class. So, Caleb, they have a long, long way to go. How far to go, in your opinion? And they'll take you as far as you need to go in work trucks. All about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle available. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. We'll pull that website up. Contracting, all about time. Work Trucks has it figured out. Utility body trucks with an app hide. Work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special. It's all online, worktrucksllc.com, Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com, worktrucksllc.com. They'll have you fit to a T. They'll save you time. Time is money as a contractor. Proud supporter of the Tennessee Vols, worktrucksllc.com. All right, Kale, I just don't see NC State ever being at the level that Clemson got to even though you've given me the history lesson and why it can happen. Clemson, as pointed out on the message board, didn't win a championship in the 80s. They were relevant before Dabo Swinney got there. To me, the other factor is, and if there are any of those in North Carolina, I would love your input to me. Does North Carolina State, like Auburn, like Texas A&M, like Florida State, are they always going to be in second place to North Carolina just because they're not the official state school? Is that a reach, Caleb?
You know, I thought that for a while, but I will say that, I've told you I'm very connected to traditional ACC basketball and things like that. And I mean the old ACC with Maryland in it and things like that. NC State was always the one school like north of South Carolina. Because basically the way the ACC always works is the southern schools from like South Carolina down, so Clemson, Georgia Tech, they care more about football. But from North Carolina up, they care more about basketball, with the exception of Virginia Tech. And I always said that NC State was the one school that seemed to have a fan base that could get excited about football on a maybe Virginia Tech level, a Clemson level, things like that, if they had something to cheer for. And by the way, Clemson did win the title in 1981. That was, I think that was a fluke title. I don't think anybody thought Herschel Walker had like 3 fumbles in a game against Georgia that year, and that was the only quality win they had. They did beat Nebraska in the bowl game, but that didn't count. I'm going to ignore that. So put it this way, Dave. Let's rewind. You're going to the Peach Bowl. It's 2003. Casey Clausen's final game. Tennessee's playing Clemson. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the game hasn't kicked off. Before the game kicks off, let's just talk about the situation. If I were to tell you right then that, hey, Dave, so T. Martin's son is going to be a 5-star receiver. This kid in the stands right there, Trevor Lawrence, that's wearing a Tennessee jersey, whose dad went there, who's a huge Tennessee fan. He's going to be a 5-star quarterback in about 10 years. There's this other kid from Oak Ridge named T. Higgins. He's going to be a 5-star quarterback, a 5-star receiver in 10 years. And this team you see right now, Clemson, they're going to get all 3 of those kids and beat Tennessee out for them. What would you have said to me?
I would have said you're crazy, because I thought they had, it was the EJ, what was his name? EJ or something. He was a very good linebacker.
Oh, you're thinking of Maryland. That's Maryland. EJ.
Oh, Maryland. I'm sorry. Okay. So I would have said you're crazy. Yeah. I didn't think that Clemson was anywhere on that level. And if you look back at it, how many of Clemson's players? So I get your point. Is it more important for Clemson, or I'm sorry, NC State, to hire the perfect coach? Because Dabo Swinney proved to be that. Or is it more important for NC State to have other teams struggle around them, such as Tennessee and South Carolina? I mean, to me, I don't think they have the coach in place right this moment to come close to competing with Tennessee in a recruiting perspective.
Well, this is kind of my hot take. I think it's the former, and I'm going to tell you why. You may think they aren't close with Dave Doeren. Dave, if you watch Dabo Swinney, though, would you ever look at that guy and be like, that guy won 2 national titles? He comes across as a goofball half the time. He's borderline Shane Beamer.
That's true.
And I think he just cashed in on the ACC being down, Tennessee being down, and to his credit, I'll give him this. He had a good long-time defensive coordinator in Brent Venables, and Dabo Swinney brought the spread offense to the ACC before anybody else was running it. And Taj Boyd fell out of the sky into his lap because Lane Kiffin pushed him out. I'm going to tell you this right now. We could go back in history. If Lane Kiffin does not pull Taj Boyd's scholarship, there is no Clemson dynasty. It never happens.
Wow. It's pretty strong. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're with Caleb on that, or if you're not, you can do it too. Because I think some of the people might just say,
that's crazy.
But we'll see.
What do you think? Was Dabo a beneficiary of? Okay, you asked.
Let me ask you this. I don't think the ACC is going to be the ACC much longer. There's going to be a mega conference. Do you think NC State makes the mega conference? Because they're not going to compete with anybody in recruiting that's in the mega conference. We could agree with that, right?
We could. There's going to be 3 mega conferences, and it's the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12. I do think there's a spot for NC State in the Big 12. I do. Now, here's the thing. The SEC, guys, they want to get into North Carolina. And I've told you guys 1,000 times over, there is going to be a bidding war for North Carolina between the SEC and the Big Ten. North Carolina and Virginia, the SEC and the Big Ten are both going to fight like hell to get those two schools. Here's the difference. If UNC and Virginia end up in the Big Ten, the SEC can then go to NC State. Now, I don't know what you would do, Dave, but you would probably take Duke over NC State. But I would actually take NC State over Duke if I'm the SEC. If it's down to those two schools and I want to get into North Carolina, I'm taking NC State.
Well, in my mega conference, mine's different. You said 3. I got 32 teams in basketball. I don't give a rat's rear end about. So Duke's not even in the conversation.
Right. So it's if you but say you know this, you've talked to Greg Singy.
Okay,
they want to get in the North Carolina market.
Let's say they take 4 out of the ACC. They make a mega conference. They take about 10 out of the SEC. They take about 10 out of the Big Ten. They take about 6 out of the Big 12. And hey, ACC, you've got room for 4. Does NC State make it before we move on?
No, because Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and are the top 3. And I think North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Virginia all have it in over NC State, if that's the case. But I don't think there's going to be a mega conference of 32 teams. I think there's going to be a mega conference. There's going to be 3 mega conferences of roughly 70 teams, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, sir, I will credit you. You've won some people over on the message board. Where do we stand on the poll question?
All right, so finally I got some people over. It was 100% at 18 votes. No, they'll never be relevant. Now we're at 44 votes, and 11% are saying, yes, they're a sleeping giant. So once the people over with my comments. See, this is why I love our message board. Our message board is very intelligent, and they aren't stuck in their ways. They will listen to evidence, just like Dave and I do. Dave and I change our opinions based on evidence because that's what you're supposed to do.
I agree. The UPS store, Hardin Valley, you need to change them. Here to help individuals and small businesses by offering a wide range of products and services locally owned by former Vol family and operated and conveniently located at 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Right down below, you can click on it and get all their services. 10629 Hardin Valley Road, the UPS store in Hardin Valley. So this to me is interesting because I want to put this on the poll. We're going to give you 4 options about the game, and I believe we're going to be surprised, and I believe that I'm going to predict what the H, and that's going to happen. We'll see. Because you should only worry about winning. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, your only goal should be burying NC State. I think people are getting a little sidetracked on some other things. So your choices on the poll question are going to be this. And be honest, if you believe that NC State's going to get blown out, there's no doubt about it. You can pick seeing Nico light it up versus a Power 5 school. It would be another one after he did so against Iowa, but certainly a different scenario here. James Pierce going off for multiple sacks, or watching newcomers like Boo Carter have a breakout game, or just a blowout. You don't care, no matter how it happens. Caleb, it's got to be the latter and the last one, right?
Yeah, you want the blowout the most. And here's the biggest reason why. It's funny, you brought up Iowa. NC State has a similar philosophy to Iowa. We talked with Noah Fleshman on Wednesday, and I did a little more digging. They run a 3-3-5. Their philosophy is make you work the field to score. Well, what that means is, as much as you want to see Nico light it up, he may just have to take what's given to him in this game. And if he takes what's given to him in this game, that may mean 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, or even 1 touchdown, no interception. And it may look very pedestrian, but it's very similar to the Iowa game. It'll be so extremely efficient that then I would have to come back and say Will West, who we spoke to yesterday, was right, and his Heisman odds won't increase at all. In fact, they would decrease, because a deeper dive into this NC State defense it's very much, we'll let you get whatever you want between the hash marks, 20-20. But we think that if we make you work the field and move the ball, you're bound to make a mistake at some point. And I think that that's going to require, again, a level of patience from Nico Iamaleava that could prevent him from being able to light it up.
New poll question I just posted. What do you most want to see against NC State? And the choices are not the blowout. I moved on with that. Nico goes off, Pierce with multiple sacks, or breakout players, or a strong running game. Actually, I put a strong running game as the third choice. It's a strong running game. And here's why. Because after talking to Cooper and getting insight for some other people yesterday, this NC State defensive front isn't bad. And I make my picks on Thursday, and I might have altered it based off what I was told by multiple people yesterday. So if Tennessee comes out and runs the ball for 200 yards, and we're going to get into the stats. They were top 25, by the way, NC State last year in stopping the run in some statistics. So if they run the ball for 200 yards, I think it's more significant for Tennessee moving forward than Nico throwing for 350 yards. Am I crazy, Caleb?
No, it's not. And it's particularly because of what I just talked about, too, with the way NC State plays. Nico may not get the chance to throw for 350 yards, and you got to be able to see. And this is the most.
I think it's the opposite. I think they're going to force Nico to beat him. Because as good as I think he's looked and you think he's looked, still as a coach, and Dave Doeren looks about as old school coach as they come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to say, I'm going to make that freshman beat me. I've been around a lot of old school coaches, buddy. And I'm just telling you, that is his, that at least started his mindset last week. He may have seen Nico against Chattanooga and altered it a little bit, but I guarantee you on that Friday after they got away with that win against Western Carolina, he said, well, we got a freshman quarterback next week. I'm going to make him beat me. I guarantee you.
If that's how he thinks, by the way, that was almost a Buzz Peterson accent you did for him. Is that your stereotypical ball coach? You know? All right, I'm just gonna have to say this. If that's what he's thinking, then no, you don't need to. I disagree. You don't need to worry about running it. You want to see Nico light it up. Every time Nico gets the chance to light it up, you want to see it because he will have the chance. And I'm telling you, I think Nico, I don't think you can afford to give him the chance to light it up. I'm telling you guys, he is incredibly good. By the way, Heath Schuler and I both said the same thing yesterday. Heath said, don't throw Aiden White's way. He coached Aiden White in high school, right? And yes. I listed Aiden White as one of the top 5 Wolfpack to watch for. So we do think on the same wavelength. But where I might disagree with Heath a little bit is I think if Nico's going to be the Heisman contender, he's got to target team's best cornerback and not be afraid to throw their way.
I don't think he's going to be. That's a good player. And I think that it's going to be, this is different from yesterday. I think it's going to be tougher to run the football than I thought earlier in the week. And I think it's going to be easier to throw. I think they may make a change at safety. And I hinted at that earlier in the week. That's from my football sources. I think they're unsure of their safety position. So if it's tough to run the football, Caleb, and you've got an unsure safety position, who does that favor on Tennessee's football team?
If it's tough to run the football and you've got an unsure safety position, you're talking about NC State, right?
Yes.
Well, that obviously would favor Nico.
Very, very much so, and I think it will. It would favor.
And they did have an injured safety. That's true.
Yep. And so I don't know that there's that chemistry back there. It would favor you if you joined Hooker's Corner, and we would greatly appreciate that. Hooker's Corner, just for $9.98 a month, you get increased recruiting coverage, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun, and also an opportunity to win a monthly grand prize thanks to our friends at Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures, over 5 million sports treasures, and we absolutely love them. So much more sports memorabilia everywhere, daily updates. Go to Facebook or use that QR code and you can follow them on Facebook. If what I believe is to be true, that Tennessee is going to have to throw the ball well, often, and for a lot of yardage to win, and Nico's as good as I think he is, then yes, I believe that Nico's odds will increase significantly because he could throw for 350 or 400 yards. Let's not forget what this offense could do in 2022. The benchmark for most quarterbacks and most offenses where you say he had a great game is what, 300 yards passing, Caleb?
Yes. That's
almost another day at the office in Josh Heupel's offense.
I agree. And also it depends on the era too, because there's only like a certain window where a 300-yard game was great. Because Dave, let's call it what it is. In 1995, if a quarterback threw for 300 yards, what you really thought was, well, they got behind and they were desperately trying to throw it to get back in the game. Like when Peyton Manning threw 466 yards against Florida that one year, and that was a record. Yeah, well, they fell behind 35-0. So all they did was throw it to try to get back into the game.
No, agreed. All right, so go ahead and vote on our poll question now. What do you want to see against NC State? What do you most want to see? Nico goes off, Pierce with multiple sacks, a strong running game. So this could be one where I'm not going to say Tennessee can't run the football because I can't remember a time that they just – how many times have they just all out been stonewalled at the line and haven't been able to run the football under Josh Heupel in the past 3 years when he had most of his guys? Is there a game you can recall that it just didn't happen?
No. Yes, Alabama. They couldn't run the ball against Alabama. Okay. They got stonewalled consistently last year against Alabama. And that's why a lot of people thought that Tennessee choked away that game or mad at the rest. The truth of the matter is Alabama was going to come back and win because Tennessee could not buy a yard when they were running the football.
All right, so we could ask on the message board, how does NC State's defense compare to Iowa, in your opinion? I'll give you my thoughts. Much faster. I don't think they're going to be as conservative in dropping people back. I think they're kind of worried about Joe Milton, but Joe Milton was never going to play, as we told you. And I just don't think they wanted to get blown out 69-3 in a bowl game. But that 35
because 35-0 looks so much better.
It does look. I mean, it looks like you didn't show up, but I mean, 69-3 when you've got a month to prepare would have looked awful. And Tennessee could have done that with their lack of speed. So I think NC State has more speed and is better athletically. I think they're better up front for sure. And after talking to Cooper, I believe that even more. He has a lot of respect for their front, and he said it's not just their toughness. And you can watch that on the Vol Report, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, over 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. But if you can watch that, and he said it's not only their toughness, it's not only their players, it's also their scheme. Now, they lost one of their better linebackers. You can read about that on offthehooksports.com to the draft, who went with the third pick. So they're probably not as good as they were last year, but they are still pretty darn good. So we're going to visit with Jimmy Hyams next. So I'm going to change up the poll question slightly if we can. And what are we going to ask Jimmy is because he'll have some insight.
I'm going to ask, is Tennessee overlooking NC State? Just straight up. Are they not taking NC State seriously enough? And NC State certainly feels that way, by the way, if you go through their fan message boards this week.
Why do they think that?
Because one, we've seen the Vegas line that started at Tennessee 4.5 and then went to 5.5 when it opened officially, and now has moved all the way up to 10. And people like me and you who cover Tennessee who are saying, how badly does Tennessee need to beat NC State over the weekend? And also, I'll just point this out. Josh Pate, who was doing some reporting, said that there's a big difference with the people in Knoxville that he's spoken with and the people in Charlotte. And he said, or not Charlotte, and the people in Raleigh. He said the people in Knoxville are like, this is a game we got to get past until we begin conference play. He said in Raleigh, they're treating this like a Super Bowl. He said NC State is treating this game like a real Super Bowl. And
all right. So, I look forward to visiting with Jimmy Hyams about that. He still has great sources within the program. And I remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by our great friend Rick Terry, Rick Terry's Jewelry Design. Rick Terry also gives you the opportunity to take part in our Great 8 Garmin Challenge. So let me tell you something about Rick Terry. He's got the Fire Opals, very affordable game day jewelry that your loved one will absolutely appreciate. Maybe you will as well. But they've got those Garmin watches. So with 8,000 subscribers, all you have to do is be a free member of Hooker's Corner, and a subscriber to this channel, and we're going to give away a Garmin watch worth over $1,000 when we hit that 8,000 subscriber mark. So that's pretty cool. Jimmy Hyams up next. We love Jimmy. He's brought to you by Ray Varner Ford, and we'll just ask you, should Tennessee fans be concerned about the Vols overlooking NC State? In 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Fifth year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be.
And I have no idea why we couldn't hear that commercial break, so
we heard it
in 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports.
When the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton, strong.
Now I've figured it out. Technical issues never happen. 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports. Jimmy's next.
Fifth year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2023 Ford Expedition Limited 4x4 $67,950, 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT $41,950, 2023 Ford Escape ST Line $28,940. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Want to remind you that our next guest is brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford, so you can certainly check them out as up in God's country, Clinton, close to Norris. Have you ever been to Norris, Caleb Calhoun? Where the hookers hail from? Not the hookers that you may be thinking of, but have you ever been to Norris?
No.
Norris was a little bitty community, very quaint, built when they were building the bomb in Oak Ridge for the families to live of the servicemen that were, or actually the scientists that were sent there to build the bomb. And it's a quaint little village where the hookers are from. Not the hookers you're thinking of, Caleb. Jimmy Hyams joins us now. See, he was just thinking Dave and Shanda. Jimmy doesn't have a dirty mind like Caleb.
That's right.
Did you know that
hookers are the bomb? So you know.
Did you know that? Did you know that about Norris, Jimmy?
No, I did not. I've been to Norris. I've been to Norris Lake. I've enjoyed it, but I did not know that background.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. That's where the hookers are from. Okay, so here we go. I just like saying that. All right, so we are going to just dive into this NC State game, and And Caleb brought up a really good point. NC State sees this line moving, so they know that the country thinks that Tennessee's going to blow NC State out. This is also their Super Bowl by Josh Pate. At least he said that. I don't know if he really believes that. Nevertheless, let me ask you this. Is there a chance that Tennessee could overlook a ranked team in NC State?
No, I don't think so. I think that they had a lot of offseason preparation toward NC State instead of Chattanooga. They knew Chattanooga would be like a glorified scrimmage. And I don't think they'll overlook the ranked team. I don't think they'll overlook a team that's got a quarterback that's thrown for over 10,000 yards, rushed for over 1,100 yards. I don't think they'll overlook a receiver, Kevin Concepcion, who I think was the best freshman receiver in the nation last year. I think Tennessee has been and will be very respectful of NC State. I do not think they will overlook them. Doesn't mean they'll play great, but I don't think it'll be because they're looking past them to that powerhouse called Kent State.
Oh, that's true. I'm going to add to that, and then Caleb, I'm going to put you in the devil's advocate role. And I from talking to Cooper in our ball report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning yesterday, he seemed very respectful of NC State as well. So, Caleb, how would you argue otherwise, or can you, or do you even believe as much? Caleb, are you there, sir?
Oh my gosh, a rookie mistake. Mike muted.
Did you rookie mistake this thing?
I rookie mistaked it. I know that. I rookie mistaked it. Let's hope that Tennessee's young secondary doesn't rookie mistake it the way I just did tomorrow. All right, Jimmy, let me float this out to you, because I want to play off the poll question and the way I worded it on our message board. Because the poll question I set up was, will Tennessee overlook NC State? No, not with Josh Heupel. Yes, they need to be careful. But what do you make of this one? What if the real answer is, who cares? NC State has no shot anyway. Do you think it matters even if Tennessee does overlook NC State? Is NC State just not good enough to compete?
I think it matters. I do. I'm reminded of this, and I'm going to go way back, but I'm reminded of, and this will be from Tennessee's end of it. I remember back in 1989, Tennessee opened the season against Colorado State. They won 17-14. I think they had to block a punt to help win the game. I'm watching that team and think, boy, they stink. They're not any good. Now they're going out to play a 6th-ranked UCLA team the next week. And you know what? Tennessee blew out UCLA. I don't think the NC State team that we saw against Western Carolina is anything like what they really are. I think they overlooked Western Carolina. And I would not be fooled by their ineffective performance. Do I think Tennessee's going to win the game? Absolutely, I do. But I think if Tennessee goes in thinking this is just another cupcake, we can roll out the ball, they could get beat. So I think Tennessee has to play well to win the game. I think they will. But I'll go back to this. I don't think that NC State team that you saw is anything like what they can be. That's a team that won 9 games a year ago. It's a team that a year ago beat Miami, it beat Clemson, it beat North Carolina. This is a good program that Dave Doeren has. So I don't think Tennessee will overlook them, but if they do, they could get beat.
Jimmy, did you learn anything about Tennessee from the Chattanooga game that you didn't know? Because they were playing a bunch of guys like Caleb.
I didn't learn. Well, I can't say I learned this, but I thought Nico was incredibly accurate. I didn't chart this, but Pro Football Focus had him 14 of 14 on over the middle. It had him 4 and 4 on deep middle routes. Those were routes that Joe Milton had trouble connecting on. So I thought his accuracy was incredible. Now, I'll argue with one of their over the middle incompletions. He threw a bad pass to Squirrel White that was incomplete. I don't know how they missed that. But I thought his accuracy was great. He hit people in stride. Didn't they have like one drive where he threw a 23-yard and a 36-yarder, boom, boom, touchdown? So, yeah, that was extraordinary. That's really good against air. Otherwise, I didn't learn a whole lot. Dylan Sampson ran about like I thought. Heck, James Pierce, I was wondering why didn't he show up on the stat sheet? And I think he had, 10 or 12 snaps in the whole game. Mm-hmm. So they played so many people on defense, but I can't say I learned much of anything in such a one-sided victory over Chattanooga.
Jimmy, you bring up James Pierce playing 10 or 12 snaps, and they pull Nico at halftime, which typically Josh Heupel pulls in the third quarter, not really halftime. Does that serve as more evidence that they're not overlooking NC State because he was trying to save as much as possible for NC State and want it to be as vanilla as possible against Chattanooga?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a part of it. Here's the other thing, too. If I'm Josh Heupel, and I understand this is a neutral site game, but if I'm Josh Heupel, I'm reminding this team, you know what? When you played at Florida last year, you laid an egg. When you went on the road at Missouri, you laid an egg. 2 years ago at South Carolina, laid an egg. So when they go on the road, I think that a point can be made. You better not overlook anybody because you've played poorly in 3 different occasions on the road in the last 2 years. And so you're going on the road again, and you better be focused. So I would play that card if I were Josh Heupel.
Jimmy, I think they're super focused, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. I think they're super focused for the entire season. And I'm going to lay a theory out here. And guys, if you want to rip me on the message board, you're welcome to. But this is what I believe. Yeah, Caleb will rip me. Everybody will rip me. It's just a rip fest. I don't believe this team believed in Joe Milton last year. During the season, one player said to me off the cuff, no, it's nobody that we worked with. So it's not Jacob Warren or Cooper Mays. But somebody said it doesn't really matter if you can throw it 80 yards if the guy's at 60.
No, I said that, by the way.
Yeah, we all did. We all did. But for a player to say that, I think they knew that there was a glass ceiling last year, that when it came down to it, they weren't going to be able to beat the elite because they didn't have the elite quarterback. And I think there was always a self-doubt. I don't think there's any self-doubt with Nico. Am I reaching there?
Well, I can't dispute that there was a player that told you that. Now, did he speak for the rest of the team, or was he the lone wolf? I thought that Joe Milton had the locker room. I think that's one reason why Heupel didn't bench him in favor of Nico.
Right.
Because there were so many players that I thought supported Milton. So was there some angst about his accuracy? Maybe a little bit, but I don't know if I felt like the players thought there was a ceiling with him. And I'll go back to something else too. And I was fooled by this a little bit, and I'll argue with some other people about it. I thought Milton played well against Clemson. And somebody said, well, but they had some 3 and outs. Well, yeah, Clemson had a very good defense. Of course they had some 3 and outs. But you know what? They scored 31 points. But if I'm not mistaken, there were there 6 games, at least 5 games last year where they didn't score more than 21.
Right.
So when I saw Milton against Clemson, I thought, okay, he's been in the system long enough. He's going to have a really good year for Tennessee. And I was wrong. He was too inconsistent. He was too inaccurate. I'm not surprised he made a roster because he can throw it 80 yards or further. But and the NFL's enamored with that too. But I don't think he'll ever be a starter in the NFL. I think he'll be a guy that just makes a roster.
And I would agree with what you said. I think he had the locker room. I think he was liked. I just don't know that he was believed in. I think people hoped for him. And this was at the beginning of the year last year. I think they hoped and they believed, and he was a nice guy, or they didn't believe. They hoped and liked, but they didn't believe. Caleb, that's the best way I could phrase it. And I think they have total belief in Nico to take them to stratospheric heights.
Well, this is why 2023 was the most difficult coaching job for Josh Heupel. It wasn't just dealing with the quarterback that wasn't fit for his system, but I've said from the start, Jimmy, that Heupel put all his eggs into the basket of being successful in 2024. But to get to 2024 after the 2022 season, he had to keep the team together and stay above water, at least respectable, prove that he still has a solid program in 2023, which 8-4, 9-4, you can do that. That's enough. That's bare minimum, but he did hit bare minimum. I mean, because let's be honest, once you start getting to 8-5, 7-6, you're getting more concerned. But 9-4 is bare minimum. And I think that he had to keep the team together while doing that. And he had to do all that with the quarterback that was just not a fit for his system. And I think his whole thought of last year was, if I can just get through this year, if I can just get past this year and get into 2024 with Nico Iamaleava and keeping this team together and nobody turning against me because of Joe Milton or anything like that, we'll be ready to go in 2024. And I think he pulled that off.
Let me throw a couple hypotheticals at you. Number one, when did Heupel realize Joe Milton wasn't a fit for the system? At what point?
September.
Oh, I think
yeah, I mean, I think he realized at some point in September he wasn't a gamer, and that he was kind of inaccurate in practice, but he was really inaccurate in games.
All right. And the other thing is, if Heupel had said with maybe 4 or 5 games left, he goes to Nico against, I don't know, starting with the Missouri game, how do you think the team would have responded? Even though Milton had the locker room, do you think there would have been a revolt? Or do you think Nico would have played so well, the players like, okay, we get it? Because I remember a few years ago at Clemson, didn't they have a quarterback named Kelly Bryant? And about halfway through the year, they benched him. And he was a guy that was popular with his teammates. But, this Trevor Lawrence guy was something special. I just wonder if Tennessee had gone with Nico with 4 or 5 games left, if any of the players would have revolted.
To the point, you might have had some guys, I mean, they had a lot of transfers, but you might have had some guys say, I'm not going to take that NIL money from Tennessee. I'm going to go somewhere else because it seems to be in flux at the quarterback position, or I'm going to go on to the NFL. I mean, Cooper Mays could have done that. Yeah, I think I would say this, Jimmy. I think there was about a 25% chance or less that you could have lost the locker room. I believe they would have backed the better player, but what you say is very applicable.
Well, Trevor Lawrence won the locker room because of how good he was.
Right.
Nico might have won it just like that if he had performed very well right away. And by the way, I think he would have performed very well right away.
Yeah.
Can I throw out?
Yes, go.
Is it also Kelly Bryant was a little bit younger than Joe Milton was? I think a part of this was a sympathetic thing. Yeah, that's true. The reason I think it would have been even trickier, and I'm going to be honest, this is a weird thing, but there's a sentimental side for some players and just some people. It was for Kelly Bryant. It's like, okay, he got benched, but he can transfer. He can go to Missouri. He'll be able to play. For Joe Milton, this was his last year, and I think there may have been a few people that felt really, really bad for him seeing him bench his last year, his last chance to make an impact.
And then he stuck it out. He stayed here when he. Go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah.
But the flip side is you didn't have the transfer portal back then, so. I mean, you had a city year, so I think people dislike that as well. I find it interesting, Jimmy, that you think it would have gone well had it been Nico with about a month left in the season, because I do too. Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Ray Varner Ford. Imagine there being a dissenting vote from Caleb Calhoun. What would have happened if the Vols would have hired Dave Doeren? I want to remind you, Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Ray Varner Ford.
And the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2023 Ford Expedition Limited 4x4 $67,950, 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT $41,950, 2023 Ford Escape ST Line $28,940. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, Jimmy, so it's pretty simple. I want to know what would have happened to Tennessee football had Dave Doeren been hired. And before we get to that, I want you to take me back. How close was Doeren to being the head coach of the Vols?
I'll start with the second part of that. I think he was fairly close, and I think he felt like he was pretty close. As I recall, when John Curry went over to talk to him, and Doeren, I think, felt like they might have he had a good chance to get the job. And then next thing you know, Curry's out in California interviewing Mike Leach, and Mike Leach thought he had the job, thought there was a verbal agreement to take the job. And if remembering the emails that Tennessee released, Doran's like reaching out to John Curry about, hey, where are we with this thing? What's going on here? I think he was fairly close. Ultimately, when you read through all those the massive number of emails, you see that Doeren thought he had a pretty good chance, but the guy that was going to get hired was Leach, and Leach was going to come. I'm convinced of that. So I would say he was probably the number two. If Leach had said no, I think Dave Doeren would have been hired by Curry if Curry had the power to do so.
Well, let me ask you, where would Tennessee football be right now?
Yeah, I think they would be in that 8 or 9 win level. At NC State, he's won at least 8 games 4 years in a row. There are not a whole lot of ACC teams, and he has done it without the resources that Tennessee provides. Now, The flip side of that is to why I don't think it'd be any better, even though he'd have more resources, is the SEC is better than the ACC. So I think he'd probably be an 8 or 9 win coach who's not going to get you ultimately where you would want to go.
Jimmy, let me float this with you real quick, because I'm probably with you, 8 or 9 win coach, which is kind of what Butch Jones was. And then when Tennessee fans got upset about that, Butch Jones just completely melted down and wilted beneath the pressure. Do you think Dave Doeren would have? Do you think so? Say they're 8 or 9 wins and they're stuck there for a little while. Do you think Dave Doeren would have been able to handle that better than Butch Jones did? At least kind of stayed like level-headed, maybe not have kept his job, but could have kept Tennessee afloat? Or do you think he would have overseen a collapse of the program because of him melting down because of his insecurities and the way people didn't like it and the pressure people put on him?
No, he wouldn't have melted down like Butch Jones. Butch Jones was extremely immature and to a certain degree way over his head. He could not handle any criticism. And I think Dave Doeren had been around long enough and is a more mature person that he would have dealt with it much better than Butch Jones. I don't think he'd had the meltdown, but I also think Tennessee fans would have grown tired of an 8 or 9 win season. So ultimately, I don't think Dave Doeren would have lasted had he been hired at Tennessee. But I don't think you would have seen that monumental meltdown that you saw under Butch Jones.
What do you consider Dave Doeren's strengths as a coach?
Typically, he's been a defensive-minded coach, and their defenses usually are pretty good. They've ranked among the better defenses in the ACC. Every now and then, when he'd have a good team that you had to deal with, one year, I don't know what happened to him after that, but Devin Leary had a phenomenal year one year. Then he gets hurt, then he goes to Kentucky, and he doesn't do anything. I'll be curious to see. And last year, this boggles my mind. They bring in this guy from Virginia named Brennan Armstrong, who was terrific at Virginia and not that good at NC State. Now you got another transfer coming in Grayson McCall. He put up great numbers at Coastal Carolina. I realize that was a smaller school and smaller, and the competition wasn't the same. I'll be curious to see how to deal with that. I think he's had trouble being consistently good on offense, and maybe a part of that is either not hiring a good offensive coordinator or not knowing how to develop your quarterbacks.
Let me jump in front of you for a second, Caleb, because we just mentioned the name Mike Leach. How much did Tennessee need something exciting? Of course, they want a great, successful coach, but you're talking about Dave Doeren getting to 8 or 9 wins, maybe 9 or 10. Perhaps that's an improvement. But how much did Tennessee's fan base need something exciting like a Josh Heupel offense or even a Mike Leach offense?
You asking me or Jimmy?
Jimmy, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so at the time they would have hired Leach, that's when they hired Jeremy Pruitt. That was coming off the miserable SEC season. Where they go winless in the SEC, or
first time ever they went winless in SEC play. Yeah.
So, they would have been much better off hiring Mike Leach. They'd have been much better off bringing in somebody that could score some points and get the fan base excited. We talked about this not long ago, guys. I was interviewing Danny White, and I said, "Hey, your MO is our up-and-coming coaches that can score points." He said, "That's right." He said, "Because points sell tickets, and I'm in marketing." So, yeah, they needed an infusion like that. They did not need a Jeremy Pruitt coach that would come in, average 21 points a game, and try to win 20-13. That is not what Tennessee needed at that point.
Wow, it's incredibly insightful. He said that. I'm sorry, Caleb, go ahead.
Well, and Jimmy, let me ask you this. If you're trying to build a powerhouse program and if you're Georgia or LSU or Ohio State or Alabama, you can just roll in talent. You could get a defensive coach. But if you're like at a Tennessee, and maybe this is why you think Dave Doeren is an 8 or 9 win coach, because we see Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Isn't it true that if you're at Tennessee, a place like Tennessee, and you're trying to get to 11 or 12 wins, don't you kind of need a creative offensive mind? Because isn't a defensive coach just, when you're in the downward in the dumps of a program, isn't there a ceiling in what a defensive coach can bring you, winning scoring 21 points a game?
Nowadays, yeah. I mean, you could do it. Alabama in 2011 won a national championship, and they had one game against LSU where the final score was 9-6.
Yeah, and then they got a rematch that they didn't deserve.
And they won 21-0, and LSU didn't cross midfield. So yeah, you could do that then. You can't do that now. You got to score some points. You got to have a quarterback that's productive, that can put points on the board. And that's one reason I think Doeren had a definite ceiling if he'd have come to Tennessee, because their quarterback production, with that one exception when Devin Leary had a great year, has not been that good, even though they've had quarterbacks that on paper were thought to be pretty darn good. So I think that would have limited what he would be able to do or how successful he'd be. That's why I don't think he'd ever been a 10 or 11 win coach at Tennessee.
Jimmy, as much time we spend together, I don't think we've ever really talked about this. Do you believe that Josh Heupel is ultimately going to be a championship coach at Tennessee? Do you believe he'll win the SEC and or national championship?
My answer, honestly, is probably not. However, do I think he can be a consistent college football playoff team? Yes. Now that they've gone to 12. So I think he can do that, but it's so hard to win a national championship. And I'm sure you know this. How many coaches in college football right now have won a national championship?
Oh, that are actually still coaching? Not on TV. Active?
It's 2, right?
3.
3, yeah.
3? Is it 3? I thought it was 2.
Kirby Smart, Mac Brown, Dabo Swinney.
Oh, that's right. Mac Brown does have a national title.
So that's how hard it is to win a national championship. Only 3 active coaches have done it. So I would say probably not. And when's the last time? So Tennessee won a national championship legitimate 1951 to 1998. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
And won a national championship since 98.
Let me ask you this. If I said, oh, I just got a text message from Kirby Smart and he's retiring tomorrow, what would you say?
I would say that
Dave's got some damn good sources is what you would say.
I'd say that everybody in the SEC would be thrilled to death. Now,
Jimmy, change though your position on Heupel.
It's still hard to do.
Yeah.
So then if he retired, there'd only be 2 coaches, active coaches that have won a national championship. Would it give Tennessee a better opportunity? Absolutely. Do I think they could win it given the history? Probably not.
Jimmy, on that front, do you think when we're grading coaches and the best of all time, do you think we overvalue championships because of how much luck goes into play? Because I think Tom Osborne went 20 years without winning a title and no one thought he could win the big one. He goes and wins 3 or 4. C. Spurrier wins a national title, but he only wins 1, and we think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. And Johnny Majors, I think many people think he was a better coach at Tennessee than Philip Fulmer was, even though Fulmer won a national title and Majors didn't. So do we overvalue championships when judging a coach's legacy?
Yeah, I think that we do. I think their coaches, for example, I think Mark Stoops is a really good coach at Kentucky. He's not winning a championship, but at that program, he does a really good job. Mike Leach didn't win any championships, but boy, he scored a lot of points, and he won at 2 schools, Texas Tech and Washington State, where it's hard to win. So, yeah, I do. I think that now, are they important? Yes, they are. That old Doug Dickey saying, I want my teams to be in the mix. Okay, well, I think that's where Heupel will put Tennessee. If you're in the college football playoff, you're in the mix. But I do think just because you won a national championship or you're void of one, that doesn't mean you're not an outstanding coach. There's a coach at Ohio State that hadn't won one either, right? Mm-hmm. He's pretty darn good.
I want to change the question a little bit, and then I want to let you out of here, Jimmy. His appearance brought to you by Ray Varner, Ford and Clinton. What coach right now would you say is most likely to win a championship that has not?
Ryan Day, Ohio State.
Wow, that'll get Caleb going. He's down on Ryan Day.
I'm sorry. I actually break from you, Jimmy. I think that the way Ryan Day has lost to Michigan 3 years in a row makes me really question his coaching ability, because Ohio State's had more talent all 3 years. And they didn't just lose 2 of those 3 times. They got blown out, like humiliated. And I just can't get past that.
They will like this. Caleb, I'll bet you $20 Ohio State beats Michigan this year.
Well, that doesn't count. Michigan's much worse. They don't have Jim Harbaugh.
Well, you just pointed out they couldn't beat Michigan. Now I'm telling
Ryan
you,
Day is the modern day.
They will beat Michigan, and they'll be in position to win a national championship this year.
Ryan Day is the modern day John Cooper.
Jimmy's telling
$20. Come on, Caleb.
No, it was a steak dinner. Jimmy's telling an inside joke there. Jimmy and I I bet this is the worst bet ever. I can't even remember the guy's name. Florida State quarterback, the big stiff.
Chris Winkie.
Chris Winkie. I said Chris Winkie would make 4 Pro Bowls in the NFL. And Jimmy goes, I'll take that.
That is an L.
Yeah, Jimmy didn't even wait. Jimmy, I just remember how fast he said it. I was like, damn it. I shouldn't have said that.
And hey, Caleb, 20 years later, he paid off.
Next week, it's on. Thank you, Jimmy.
So Chris Winkie was already coaching at Tennessee when Dave paid up, is what you're saying.
No, I still haven't. But I'm going to take you to Asia Cafe. How about that?
All right, we'll go.
Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. Asia Cafe. We appreciate them. Jimmy Hyams, nice enough to join us. Stay tuned. More to come, including Ollie Lane, Off the Hook Sports. Love, Jimmy. That was awesome stuff. 2 minutes, Off the Hook Sports.
When the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 24 Ford Maverick Hybrid, 25,515, 23 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, 30,995, 24 Ford F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, 59,757. Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Can't wait for our next guest. Looking forward to that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. Banks & Jones will. Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. banksandjones.com. Ollie Lane joins us now, former Tennessee offensive lineman. How are you, Ollie?
No, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today, guys.
Hey, does it? Well, we appreciate it. Thank you. Does it feel weird at all? I mean, this is the time of year where you would be hitting each other and stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely different. You know, I went to the game last weekend. It was definitely surreal not being able to run through the tee again or anything like that. But it's definitely something that I can get used to. I guess, you know, I enjoy kind of sitting back. My body feels a lot better than it did last year. So, I mean, it's some positives from it, but.
Yeah, I bet so. And I'll tell you what, the thing that blew me away really about, I'm going to get your thoughts on the Chattanooga game before we look back to the North Carolina State game, is just really how crisp everything was. You really have to nitpick to find a mistake. What did you think about the Chattanooga game?
I mean, I thought we went out there and did everything that we were supposed to do. I think, it gave fans that first realization, all right, this is now the introduction to your brand new quarterback. This is who's going to run everything for you. And I mean, I think he went out there and played a near perfect game for what he needed to. I mean, obviously, looking at the opponent, Chattanooga is not a high-level, high-tier opponent. So it's hard to judge just how successful this team's going to be from that game. But, I mean, those are the kind of performances that you need to put against those teams. Obviously last year we had the issue playing Austin Peay, didn't produce what we were supposed to in that game. So, I mean, they went into this game and did everything they needed to and gave them a good start on what could be a really good season.
I want to get to anything, Caleb, you want to add before we get to 4 downs with one of Ollie's old buddies?
No, let's go ahead and dive into 4 downs.
Okay, so I think you'll get a kick out of this because you may recognize the name that's going to set us up for 4 downs. Hit the like and subscribe button if you love Ollie being on the program. Don't forget to hit that bell, turn the notifications on. We appreciate you. 4 downs is now on Off the Hook Sports.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
4 downs today brought to you by our friend Medicare Misty. I'll tell you more about her, registered in over 48 states, and her advice when it comes to Medicare is absolutely free. So tell me if you can see or if you can hear who's setting up this segment. What should people do that like the program?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
So how excited do you think he was to do that?
No, he sounded thrilled.
I know, and it gets better. All right, Coop. What down is it, sir? If I can find the button.
Coop here. First down.
Thanks, Coop. How big of a difference is playing in the SEC versus a non-SEC Power 4 team? Now, it was a Power 5 when you were there. Yeah. But we're not talking about Chattanooga's. We're talking about those Power 4.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's obviously there's a difference. SEC teams recruit different types of players than these other Power 5 or Power 4 conferences do. So, I mean, you're going to see different types of talent, different type of athletes with different conferences, especially like just because we're playing an ACC team this week. I kind of break down like ACC teams like more athletic guys, especially like on their defensive fronts. And compared to like SEC teams, like we want size, hefty, you want to make bigger people. But, a bunch of different conferences focus more on skill levels of just being pure athletes versus when you look at like when you're recruiting offense and defensive linemen in the SEC, you're looking at I want a big run stopper. I want someone that's going to be able to put some weight on somebody. But that's not always the big emphasis for the other conferences. They think they can get away, which is they're going to beat you with more speed than they would size. And then, I mean, going in as an SEC team playing these other conferences, you take that into note, like, all right, we may be able to overpower them, but they might be faster than us. We're going to have to do some different things to make sure that we're setting right, getting protections and everything right. Because, there's a lot of guys in different conferences that are specialized in, especially like pass rushing. So it's important to make sure communication's there all around for everybody to get on page with, all right, this is their big athletic guy. We got to make sure that we're handling him correctly, not putting someone in a bad situation of dealing with that one-on-one.
All right. Caleb, you can take this one. Coop, what down is it?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
It's like he's bubbling with enthusiasm.
So, Ollie, it's funny. You talked about the speed versus, the size and things like that with the SEC versus these other conferences. Dave Doeren has notoriously focused on building NC State through the trenches more than a lot of other schools in the ACC would. So with that in mind, from what you've looked at, what type of threats does NC State's defensive front propose? What do you pose? Mm-hmm. What do you think of them? What do you think of them?
From what I've seen, they're going to bring a lot of different stuff, different looks. They run predominantly a 3-down front. They've got a pretty hefty, I think on the depth chart, he's listed about 315 at nose. So, I mean, it's going to be good size, especially there's going to be a lot of one-on-one situations when you face teams that run that three down front where they're trying to signal Cooper, trying to single him a single matchup with that nose and then put pressure on our tackles on the edges with some athletic speed guys. They've got two pretty light DNs. I think they're around the 270, 280 mark. So, I mean, they're going to be a little bit faster. They'll still have some strength and some juice behind them. However, most of their stuff's going to come from like doing different rip moves, swim moves, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be just your straight up, I'm going to bull you and take you to the quarterback. No, they're going to try to get around you in some form or fashion. A lot of the times from this defense, you're not going to see them just, I'm going to try to run straight through your offensive line. That's not what they want to do. They know that's not going to be successful against the size of our offensive line and the strength that we have. So, I mean, I think what you're going to end up seeing is a lot of trying to get mismatches in one-on-one situations for their defensive linemen. And then hopefully if they garner enough respect for double teams, it'll be some opportunities for them to free up some linebackers on some different blitz looks.
Interesting. Nobody called me one of the lighter dudes when I was 280. I was just a fat dude. All right, Coop, what down are we on?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Thank you, Coop. Keep bringing it. So my question is this. Would you be surprised if this was a close game? Odds makers have it, Bob, around 9. I know you're not aware of gambling and never have been. But I'm just curious, would you be surprised if this was a close game?
I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, it's not a home game for us. We've had struggles different times we played ACC teams, obviously going back to the last previous 2 years matchups with Pitt. Those were always close games with them. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they make it a close game. I think NC State's going to come into this one having something to prove. Obviously, they won their game against Western Carolina, but it didn't look good. And so I think they have that chip on their shoulder, like we got to prove that we belong in the top 25. But then on the same note, Tennessee's got all of last season to make up for and to prove that they are back to where we were in 22. So, I think Tennessee's got the makings to be able to go in and handle this opponent as they should and make it not a close game. But I think NC State's also got that edge and that that they're going to give them everything that they can to win the game.
All right, Caleb, setting up for you.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
It's possession down. Don't screw this up, Caleb.
All right, I'm not going to screw this up at all. Ollie,
you had your mic muted earlier, but anyway.
Yeah, some minimal mistakes, Ollie. That was a 5-yard penalty. That was a false start on my end. Muted mic. Keep it simple. What are your predictions, and what is your prediction for the game, and what are the keys?
So I mean, I think obviously I think it's going to start out as a close game. I think there'll be some firing back and forth. I think my overall prediction, if you want to like predict score, I would say I'm feeling like it's going to end up being a little distance. I think we're going to end up winning 48-28. I think it'll be close, kind of going into that halftime time. But honestly, I think we'll just end up overpowering them by the end. I think this offense has got that spark back that was missing last year that we had in 22 with Hooker. And I believe that Nico's going to be able to lead this offense to success. They've got all the talent. And if everybody stays healthy, I think a big key here will just how long our offensive line is going to be able to protect for Nico. Because the more you can make Nico feel comfortable, we saw it last Saturday, he's going to be able to make plays for you. So I think that'll be a big key to it, just offensive success. And then also defensively, just being able to handle their playmakers. Obviously McCall is not a scrub quarterback. He's good at what he does. And then that I can't pronounce his name. I'm not going to try to, but everybody knows the star wide receiver for NC State. He's going to get he's going to make his plays. But I think as long as that front seven is going to be able to put pressure on McCall, I think it's going to throw him off his game a little bit. It's going to help our secondary out because they haven't really been tested yet. This is going to be their first test to see how successful they're going to be this year. So, I mean, I think it all boils down to how much pressure we can put on McCall and how comfortable our offensive line is going to make Nico feel back there.
Can you give me 30 seconds? Because I want to ask you about Josh Heupel and the new school coach that he is. Because back in the day, you would have said you never prepare for any game other than the next game. 30 seconds from Medicare Misty, registered in over 40 states, no charge for her services. All he's going to tell us is Tennessee already prepared for NC State before Chattanooga. 30 seconds from Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. Well, I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. So do you think they were preparing for NC State during preseason camp, or is it all about Chattanooga?
For the most part, every time that we go into a game, we always focus on just what's next. What's the next game? That's, a big thing for Heupel is like the next game is our biggest game on the schedule because it's the next time that we get to go out there and play. And so I don't know as far as much of scouting ahead. I think what we've done in the past sometimes is when you have that FCS opponent for that first game, which we'll do the last 2 weeks of camp or so, is throw some looks out there that you haven't seen against different teams like NC State. Because that's the kind of time where, like, yes, you're about to get into your big dive into your first opponent, but you got some time because all the opponents have already been scouted for the season. So you've got some time to see, all right, here's some clips that we pulled from this defense that we might want to take a look at before we get into it, or vice versa for the defense to get some looks at what their offense might do that they haven't seen yet. But there's no real all right, we're just going to overlook this opponent and we're going to start prepping for the next week. I think don't want to call back to it, but I think it was 2019. We did that as a team against Georgia State, and then we saw half a loss to Georgia State, focusing on Florida too much. And so I think a lot of programs talk about how important it is to stay locked in on what game you got next. But it's also, they do a good job. Heupel does a good job of making sure that there's no other influences to be distracting them for a next week, because this week is the biggest week for them. They go out and their goal is to win every single game, and you can't do that looking past opponents.
So going back to what you said, you think preparation for Florida was distracting for the Georgia State game?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, because at that point in time, you weren't thinking – Georgia State had only been a football team for not too long. So, you weren't considering them to be, I guess, a real threat to us going into it. And, obviously Florida's that first big SEC game where it was back then. And so, I think that coaching staff took a little bit too much of a focus. Like, obviously we're still focused getting prep for Georgia State, but they took too much time out of that week to look on to Florida before securing what we actually needed to do to go secure a game against Georgia State that we should have won.
Oh, that's good stuff. Ollie, certainly appreciated a VFL, and thank you very much for the time. Hopefully we can do it again. Have a blessed weekend and a great day.
Thanks. You guys too. Thanks for having me on.
See you, buddy. That was pretty cool. Ollie Lane. So, yeah, you do kind of prepare, but you don't go out there and go, all right, guys, we're going to take those mocks and we're going to set them aside, and this is all Wolfpack Day. Yeah, I think that's but you can throw looks out there and players can get a feel for what another team does without having this stance of you're just going to thump the Mocs or Georgia State. I'd never heard it put that way in all the years I've covered football, but that's very interesting. And it makes me think Jeremy Pruitt is even a worse head coach than I did 5 minutes ago, which is tough to do. It's incredibly tough to do, but that's been done. 2 minutes off the hook sports. Coming up next will be this day in Tennessee football history. Also, the stat of the day. We've got picks coming up, so hang tight. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
When the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 24 Ford Maverick Hybrid, $25,515. 23 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,995. 24 Ford F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $59,757. Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Time for the stat of the day. All right, so go ahead and just put this up there. Caleb's our poll question. Who had the better stat of the day, Dave or Caleb? Put that on our YouTube page. People can vote for it. Go ahead and set it up, because I came across one that I think's really good. However, Caleb already had one, and that's typically his gig, so I don't want to step on his toes, and I'll never do so again. But let's see who had the better stat of the day. Click like and subscribe. Turn the notifications on so you can be a part of the program. We certainly appreciate you. And I'm going to say bank on it. The stat of the day that you should be most concerned about is mine. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank. Member FDIC. Life made better. Commercial Bank creates positive experiences for every customer every day with better solutions, better technology. Commercial Bank for personal and business. Commercial Bank. Life made better. CBTN.com. Link in the descriptions. CBTN.com. Commercial Bank. Life made better. Bank on it. My stat is better, and it's this. North Carolina State last season was 25th in the nation in rushing yards allowed per game. They lost one linebacker, as I mentioned, that went in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. But don't think this is just an average defensive front. It's better than you think, and it was top 25 last year. That's my stat. So before you vote, people are already voting for me. Don't vote for me already. So what is your stat of the day?
My stat of the day is a historical one.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee is set to play NC State for the 4th time. Many of us believe this will be the highest scoring offense Tennessee football has ever had. They already have that record right now for 2022. I believe it'll be this year. They'll break that record, and they're playing NC State. And they will set the offensive scoring record. The very first time they ever played NC State was 1939, which is their school's defensive scoring record, when they went the entire regular season without allowing a point.
Come on. All right, so my stat of the day is nice and clean. It has to do with Saturday's game. So who has the better stat of the day? Go ahead and vote for it right now. It's 50-50 right now, but mine was pretty good. A lot of people waited to hear what you had, and what you had was just a convoluted mess.
That was not a convoluted mess. It makes perfect sense. Tennessee's first game ever against NC State was in the season in which they set a defensive record for fewest points allowed ever, which was 0. This time they play NC State in a year where they will set the offensive record for most points scored for a team. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm sorry if you guys don't like history.
You got 30 seconds. Bank on it to get your vote in. My stat of the day is better. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All righty. We'll get to this day in Tennessee sports history in a moment, but it is time for picks, as we'll include you as well in the message board. So I know there's some NC State fans out there, so you can vote if you would like, and we'll have that poll question up on our YouTube page very shortly. But let's start with picks. Caleb Calhoun. I gave my pick at Tennessee yesterday. I wish I could adjust it based off what I've learned in the past 24 hours. However, I'm going to stick with it. I've got Tennessee winning 56-17. I don't expect you to give your Tennessee pick yet. Where do we want to get started with our picks as I set up our poll question on the YouTuber?
Oh, I was going to set it up too. What do you want the poll question to be? Because I had a philosophy about the prediction for Tennessee NC State.
I'll tell you what, if you got it, go ahead and throw it up there. Please hit the like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. And I want to remind you, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Go to banksandjones.com. What poll question does Caleb have up his sleeve, Your Honor? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, what is our poll question now on the YouTube page?
Very simple. Tennessee versus NC State. Vols will win and cover, win but not cover, or lose.
All right, so I'll update you on that throughout the pick segment. As you want to go first, dear Caleb Calhoun, and I will either agree or disagree via my favorite two drops. One, because it's the Larry Sanders Show, which is one of the best shows ever.
Hey now.
That's Hank Kingsley going back. And the other is because I think it fits Caleb to a T.
That's crazy.
Yes. All right, Caleb, what's your first pick, sir? And keep track of these because I believe that you were like 2 and 3 last week.
Oh, I'm not going to run. I was 0-5 on my best bets of the week last week, and I was 15 and 18 overall. And for a reminder, I pick every SEC and top 25 game, which this week, all the top 25 games happen to be SEC games. Then whatever games I choose for the 5 best bets of the week, 2 spreads, 2 over-unders, and a money line upset pick that I think you could get rich off of. There are 3 SEC games that have no spreads this week: Vanderbilt, Alcorn State, Sanford, Florida, and Texas A&M Nichols. So I'm throwing those out. There's one SEC opener, which gives us which gives us 12 SEC games to pick.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I have 2 extra ones on the best bet. So 14 games overall. So let's get it rolling. And we start with a big one, Michigan and Texas. Dave, everybody's picking Texas to cover. I think it's Texas favored by 7.5. I think Michigan covers. I think it's Michigan plus 7.5, and I'm taking the under 42.5. I think Michigan just makes this a really ugly game.
Well, they got a really good defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, at Michigan. I love his name because he used to be a game show host. This is like a second life for Wink, I believe. But I'm going to disagree.
That's crazy.
I'm going to stick with my belief that Michigan is on its way down, and you're going to start to see that this season without Jim Harbaugh. Caleb?
All righty. Next, Arkansas at Oklahoma State. 2 weeks ago, I would have had Oklahoma State covering the 7.5 point spread. However, Oklahoma State looked hideous in their opener, and Arkansas looked darn good. They both played really bad schools, but given how bad Oklahoma State played, I got Arkansas plus 7.5, and I got the under 62.5. I think Mike Gundy's offense is going to look a little sloppy, and Arkansas may make this interesting.
No,
that's crazy.
No, I think they'll run away from it. I think that was a one-game wonder. All right, what's next?
All right, disagree with me already. All right, Georgia, Tennessee Tech. You're going to love this. Georgia's favored by 53.5, but the over-under set at 62.5. I think Georgia covers, but the game hits the under. I actually think that's what's going to happen.
Hey now.
I think that could happen. Yeah, I'll go with
All
you
right.
on that.
Auburn and Cal. I got Auburn covering the 13 against Cal, and I got the over 53.5. I think Auburn's offense really hits it off, and I think Justin Wilcox is kind of falling apart at Cal.
Agreed with the latter. Where is that game?
That game is at Auburn.
Okay.
Hey now.
I'll go with you on that. Tough place to play. Cal doesn't play in a place like that.
Exactly. All right, now this is my guaranteed cover of the week. All right, you ready? Kentucky, South Carolina, take the under 42.5, but my best bet cover, Kentucky's covering the 8.5 point spread. I don't think South Carolina's dropping 4 points.
You know, there was a time when I would have never said Kentucky take a spread with them favored by more than 3 or 4 points, right? But you're right on this one.
Hey now.
South Carolina's falling apart.
They're horrible, guys. They're a terrible program.
Yep. All right, who's next?
Next, Ole Miss versus MTSU. Over under 62.5. Ole Miss is covering.
Yeah.
Ole Miss is covering. Yeah. And I'm going to actually take the under because I think Lane Kiffin will be a little bit nicer than he was last week from the 62.5.
That's crazy.
No way. All right.
He's going all in.
Yeah, he's going to cover and thump him because rightly so, he's thinking that margin of victory isn't supposed to be a part of this, but style points matter. So he needs to imagine at the end of the year, because he's already beaten Furman by 70 plus. If you say, well, that team beat 3 teams this year by 70 plus. I mean, that would carry some weight, right? I mean,
That's
you
true.
and I know it's
Right.
MTSU and Furman, but it would carry some weight. So I think he's going to try to run it up. What do you got?
All righty. Well, the question, though, is the under would MTSU score enough for it to get over 62.5? But you think Lane Kiffin himself can get over 62.5
Yes.
against MTSU? All right. Impressive. All right. So here's my second best bet of the week, and it's an over. All right. It's an over, and it's South Florida at Alabama. I'm going over 63.5. Alex Golesh is going to put up points. He's got the offense rolling. I saw enough from Jalen Milroe last week to think they can score against South Florida's defense. So I've got, I think South Florida, Alabama, the combined score goes over 63.5. I think that's points galore.
I think that's your best pick to this point.
That's hot.
Yep. Go ahead.
And the other part is South Florida, I think, covers the 31-point spread. I think they lose by less than 31.
I would agree with that.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Next, Missouri and Buffalo. I got Missouri covering the 34.5 point spread, and I got the over 51.5.
They're
like, that is total bullshit.
I'm still on Missouri. I'm going to disagree.
I
I don't gamble, so I can make picks just based off my heart, right?
That is true. You're
I
right.
say I'm a Cowboys fan, but I root for guys I covered as much as anything.
I understand that. All right, so LSU and Nichols. Look, it's an irrelevant game, and that's when Brian Kelly's at his best. So I actually think they will cover the 51.5 point spread, and I think the game will hit the over 61.5. I think LSU is going to drop like 60 points on their own in this one.
especially after what happened last week. He absolutely needs to. So I think that I think Brian Kelly's going to be very cognizant of the fan base, which I bet's been brutal this week.
Hey now.
Agreed.
All right, so I'll two more of my best bets, then I'll close with Tennessee and NC State. All right, so Oklahoma and Houston. Houston just lost to UNLV. As much as I don't believe in Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma covers that 28-point spread. I think the game hits the under because Houston doesn't score enough. It's under 49.5, but I think Oklahoma covers the 28 easily.
I would agree with that, and I think that people are going to continue to be fooled by Oklahoma and what they did last year. I don't think that's a very good football team. I think they have a very difficult schedule, and I don't think they're one of the true contenders in the SEC in the college football playoff based off their roster. They can prove me wrong, but this week's not going to do it. But I do agree with your pick.
Hey now.
All right, and then y'all know the team I've been highest on this year is the sleeper team. I picked them to cover last week, and I picked the game to hit the over because of their offense, and I did hit on both of those, but that is Mississippi State at Arizona State. I'm Mississippi State plus 5.5. And I'm for the over 58.5 with that Jeff Levy offense, Dave. And this is my best bets of the week. I'm taking Mississippi State outright. I like the money line. I think Mississippi State upsets Arizona State.
All right. So how much would you win if you got the money line?
Where is the money line at right now? I got to pull that up actually real quick. But either way, it's not showing in the moment. All right, I'll get back to you guys on that. But that's my upset payout.
All right. Are we down to Tennessee?
Two more best bets and then get to Tennessee, which is, so I named those three. Now two other ones. Iowa State and Iowa, the under 35.5. Put everything on the under 35.5. That game's not going to go over 35.5.
I agreed with that.
And then the last one, my team that covers as an underdog, I got Colorado plus 7 at Nebraska. I know people think Nebraska's going to blow them out and Colorado's dysfunctional, but I don't think Shedeur Sanders will let them lose by more than a touchdown at Nebraska.
I would agree with that too. And watch for Travis Hunter to get some Heisman talk. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but watch for that because he only touched the ball like 6 times last week and scored 3 touchdowns, and he's a lockdown corner. So it's pretty phenomenal. 2 minutes and we'll have Tennessee's pick.
Well, let's just keep it here.
Well, I want to tease it forward because I've got some insight I didn't have 24 hours ago. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports, and we'll have your pick for Tennessee.
35th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford & Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2023 Ford Expedition Limited 4x4 $67,950, 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT $41,950, 2023 Ford Escape ST Line $28,940. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, let's go ahead and get that Tennessee pick right now. I'm sticking with my pick of 56-17. I probably would make that a little bit closer, but I do think Tennessee easily covers. I just get the feeling from interviewing Cooper Mays, and I would encourage you to check that out, that he has sincere respect for NC State's defensive front. So I think it's going to be a little bit closer, but I want to put my picks out on Thursday so you have the chance to digest it. So 56-17, I will stick with that, Caleb. But if I did redo it, it wouldn't be vastly different. It would be about 42-17, somewhere in there. How about you?
Okay, so I'll say this for Tennessee. I trust the odds makers in Vegas a lot of times. If a line moves a point or two in the middle of the week, I would say, okay, that's because a lot of people are betting on one side, so they're trying to even it out. If a line moves 2 points in 24 hours and then moves 5 points within the week, that's the odds maker saying we really screwed up this line and we really need to move in favor of this other team because we really didn't give them the respect they deserve. Vegas set this line heading into last week at 4.5. They opened it at 5.5. They moved it to 7.5 in less than a day, and now they've moved it all the way up to 10 in favor of Tennessee. That's not Tennessee betting. That's Vegas saying we really screwed up. We're not giving Tennessee the respect they deserve. Let's try to offset that a little bit. And they've moved it insanely.
What do our viewers say on the poll question? You're right. I mean, I bet I would go out on a limb and say only a dozen lines move 5 points in college football over the course of the entire season. Would you argue with that? I
would say less than that. I'm going to be honest. I've covered a lot of gambling. I've never seen a line move 5 points in a week ever.
But there are 150 teams, so we're not keeping tabs on all of them.
You're right.
150 games, or there's 100 and, well, they don't do the division two. Anyway, I'm sure it happens a couple times a year, but no, this is it's either devil's advocate. It could also just show that Tennessee's fan base has a gambling problem, and they've moved down.
But that moves a line a couple of points in a week. That doesn't move a line 5 points. If a line moves like this, then that's odds makers realizing they need to reset something. And so, and by the way, our poll question agrees. They say Tennessee is going to win and cover 94%. 4% says win but not cover. 2% says lose. Somebody predicted they will lose. So I'm going to trust Vegas. I'm going to say Tennessee covers the 10-point spread. They cover it fairly comfortably. And I'm going to say they cover it with their offense. I'm going to say the game goes over 60.5. One thing I misspoke about earlier with NC State's 3-3-5 defense, it's not the same as Iowa's in the sense that they do run a lot of different blitz packages. So I think there's going to be a lot more middle of the field balls open this week. And guys, we just saw what Nico Eberle can do with that.
Agreed. Quality Tire Pros, the Eberle family, has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online, qualitytirepros.com. That's qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave said hello. And if you've got any free time and you're in Knoxville this weekend and you're not making the trip, I would highly suggest you go to Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. Again, AsiaCafe.org. And they also have that awesome Brazilian cocoa energy booster premix instant white coffee. It is phenomenal. It's been around since 1909. It's 3 generations. And they are just unbelievable. The Lim Dynasty in Asia Cafe is awesome. Last look, the player that will be the most important player in the game, plus this day in Tennessee sports history. Our last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor & Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com, simply the best.
Also, be sure and hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notifications, because we'll have the Last Look post-game show brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. That will be coming up after the game. As soon as the clock hits 0, you don't have to wait for us. We'll be ready to go. So this day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb?
27 years ago today. Well, do we want to do, you said last look, we want to do the most important player first, right? In the game?
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Gosh, cop out. Total cop out. I think Nico's the most important player, because I think it'll be more difficult to run the football than a lot of people think going into this game. However, if you want to make me work a little bit harder, I think that after what Tennessee showed against Chattanooga, North Carolina State will try to take away the outside receivers. I said it earlier in the week, Squirrel White needs to get open often and early, and I believe will, and he'll be the standout player of the game. Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even disagree with you, and I know we're supposed to say our own, but I mean, when I wrote the 5 key Vols in this game, Squirrel White was number 1 on my list. It was number 1 for that exact reason. So I'm totally with Squirrel White.
I guess you sold me. I guess I stole it from you. Sometimes in the course of the game week, I don't know where I get some information. All right, so this day in Tennessee sports history is
27 years ago today. Peyton Manning's senior year in week 2, the Vols went out to Pasadena. And with all eyes on Peyton Manning, Leonard Little went off on defense. He had a safety, forced a fumble. I think he recovered a fumble in the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, Leonard Little was the star of that game. And by the way, he did it all on 3rd down when they were lining him up at defensive end or edge rusher. And it was just evidence of what would his sacks numbers had been that year had they kept him on the defensive end the whole year instead of just on 3rd down.
It'd been phenomenal. That was one of the worst coaching mistakes. It really was my moment where I realized coaches don't know everything, because there's a mindset among some people that you'd say, I trust the coach more than you. Well, probably 90% of the time you should, right? Because they know they have more information. But that was the moment in which, as a young man, or how old would I have been? Like 21, maybe, somewhere in there. I thought 22, maybe. I thought to myself, that's a bad move. I don't care if you're getting paid back then $150,000, $200,000 to do it, and you're the defense coordinator, John Chavis. That's a bad move. Period. End of discussion. And I feel confident. And how many years has that been? 27 years? I feel pretty confident.
Yeah, you're right. It was a terrible move. And Tennessee held on to beat UCLA because of Little's efforts, 30-24. By the way, that UCLA team won every game the rest of the season, finished 10-2 and in the top 5. Turned out to be a very quality win in that year for Tennessee. One of their best wins, interestingly enough. But yeah, that was a terrible move. And it cost them against Florida the next week, because I bet if you kept Leonard Little on the edge, he is going to be hitting who was the Florida quarterback that year? It wasn't Danny Wolf, it was the guy after, maybe Doug Johnson. He was going to be laying a lot of hits on him, and he wouldn't have been able to do what he needed to do in Spurrier's offense.
Yep. Fantastic stuff. Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show, as always, represented by our good friend Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones at Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Certainly want to thank T. Scott. Want to thank everybody that has supported the program. The numbers through the roof, and we appreciate you more than you know. All of our listeners, please join Hooker's Corner if you would like some more info on the Vols. But support our sponsors, and there's some new ones, some new advertisers that have joined us. Support them and mention offthehooksports.com and Off the Hook Sports. Tell them Caleb sent you, for that matter. Or you can say Dave. Dave Hooker works too. So be sure and support our sponsors. That's why we're here. For Caleb, I'm Dave.